Hello and welcome to the lecture for chapters 1 through 3 for Business 220. This will follow along with your textbook, so I'm not going to explain everything in the textbook, but some of the high points. So in this first one here, I'm going to talk about some elements that would lead your business to be successful, so some of the factors that are important for that. I'll talk very briefly about global opportunities. I don't think that's necessarily pertinent to all of you. And then really key in on motivation. So what motivates somebody to start their own business? In chapter 2, I'll talk about getting your plan started. So how to go about doing research. And then we'll talk about feasibility analysis, which is kind of the first step in doing a business plan. Lastly, I'll make some comments about how to make the plan compelling to a reader. So ways to package the information, ways to present it, and a little bit about style, although that should reflect you uniquely. Okay, so the business concept, I would say meeting the needs of a customer. Another way of saying that is solving problems for a customer. Every successful business has that in common. It might be that you need really good Mexican food in a particular part of town. So if there's enough people that have that need, placing a Mexican restaurant there would be a solution for their problem. It doesn't need to be a life-changing problem or anything like that. It could just be something that makes their life better or more convenient, that sort of thing. We have certainly seen a lot of businesses crop up and change how they do business relative to problems that have been created by COVID-19 as an example. So that's a good example of there's a problem and how can you solve it. So that's the key to everything. Now, where that might overlap might be an indication of where you'd want to go into business. So one, it could be, and I think this is probably the case for many of you, a hobby or a talent. So maybe you enjoy as a hobby making beer in your house or whatever, and you have a talent at it, your friends like it, so that overlaps with somebody needing a particular type of beer that isn't really commercially available and you think you can do it. That'd be an example of that overlap. Another area could be previous work experience. So you could have worked at companies before. You could combine different elements of different companies in a unique way that solves customers' problems. It could be based on your education or training. So yours is going to be a little bit of overlap of that green circle and the orange circle. And then also that could be just flat out recognizing an unmet need. So there's a product that doesn't exist in the market and it should, that sort of thing. So most successful businesses incorporate at least one of the following. So one, it could be something new. There's new products that come out every day that didn't exist before. It could be something better, so an improved version. Oftentimes the most profitable company is the company that's second or third into the market with a particular product that they can make better than the original provider of that product. Those companies usually grow faster and are more profitable. So finding something out there that's being done now and doing it in a better way. Finding an underserved or new market. This is a really compelling thing because often these are customers that your competitors also aren't selling to. So finding a way to connect with them and to meet their needs is a very viable strategy. You could have a new delivery or distribution option. So you could potentially have your product available in a different way than is done traditionally. Maybe that's keg delivery to home parties, or it's beer deliveries, or whatever the case may be, or beer being sold in a location that it normally isn't sold. That could be also a category there. And then increased integration. So that means combining things together to create a more convenient situation for a customer. Kind of this is the one-stop shopping. If I go there, I can get food and this and that. So that's, again, if it helps make a customer's life more convenient, then that's a key thing. So a feasibility analysis is really the step you take after you say, I have an idea, now what next? Okay, you're not going to go from an idea to spending money next. So a feasibility analysis is a way to kind of do a fairly quick analysis to say, is this viable or not? I don't think any of you would want to invest $10,000 of your money to be able to make $500 a year. That isn't a very good return. So you might undertake this for that purpose. So the first step is understanding the market. So who is it that you're going to sell to? How many of those people are there? What kind of money might they spend on your product? You might need to talk to a couple potential customers about that to get that feel. What is the industry health and trends? So if you were telling me you're going to open a restaurant right now, I would say, well, there are certainly some trends of impacting restaurants that are headwinds that would make things more challenging. So that's something to consider. Do you have a clear strategic position? Meaning, do you have a position within the market for your type of products that's clear? So are you the Nordstroms of your product? Are you high quality, high price? Or are you the dollar store of your market? Are you low quality, low price? So do you know where you want to be, and is that clear? Next, is there capable management? So if you do get money and bring your idea to fruition, are there people on your team, or will there be people on your team that are capable of pulling that off, of making it happen? So are you able to attract, motivate, and retain employees? So most people can't pull off their deal by themselves. They need other people to help them. So how will you go about that? The issue of financial control really deals with how you're going to get your money. So if you raise money to start your business through selling shares of ownership, then you lose some control of your company. You can't make all the decisions yourself because there are other investors that also have a say. And that's important to keep in mind, that you might think you're the owner of the company, but you can't just do whatever you want. The other option is to raise money to start your company through debt, through borrowing from a bank. That gives you complete control, but it also means that you have debt that has to be paid back. So it makes it a little bit harder to weather a storm for your business. And then adaptability. So how easy would it be for your business to change and evolve based on the needs of customers changing and evolving? So how locked in would you be? So a more adaptable business is better. So those are all considerations you'd go through in developing a feasibility analysis to say, does this make sense to study further? A couple of the things you may want to consider. Many people will start a business not necessarily completely for financial reasons. I know part of the reason that I started my business was that I wanted to run a company in a different way than the companies for which I had worked, how they had been run. I wanted to treat people differently and have kind of a different set of ethics within the company. So those were some of my non-financial goals. Other people, have very lofty goals of changing the world or improving the environment or all of those kinds of things. So it's important to recognize that. That can be a really powerful way to attract people to your company. If you have a compelling non-financial goal, you're not really going to get employees to follow you if the only goal is you getting rich. So having non-financial goals is beneficial. Along that lines, there's a link here you can click on to go to a website for the guy that started Tom's Shoes, which is a really compelling story about starting a business for to benefit society. Think about differentiation. So how will your company be different than other companies? What will, just jumping in doing the same thing everybody else is doing doesn't really make a lot of sense. So how will you differentiate, and then how will you use that to motivate your staff? International considerations, again, that's not something that I think is particularly relevant to you. Exporting beer, cider, and wine, I'm sure, is fairly difficult to do. But in many categories, you can look at, well, if you could sell to Canadian customers or Mexican customers, it could really enlarge your market. But there are a lot of factors involved in that. Are there local competitors that would keep you out of the market effectively? What about suppliers? What about labor? What about following laws in other countries? That can be, ignorance is no defense, as they say about law. So motivation. Why would you want to start your own company? Well, there are 4 C's that most people fall into one category. So one element is control. So I want to have my hand on the tiller and decide where this ship is going to go. that's going to somewhat limit the size of the company, because at some point you have to give up control because it's more than one person can keep their hands on. It also, as I mentioned earlier, can have an impact on whether or not you accept outside funding in the form of investments. Another category of motivation is challenge. When you see people that are serial entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, or there's others that you can think of, but Elon Musk is the first one that comes to mind. Somebody that starts a bunch of different companies. Richard Branson, the Virgin Airlines guy, is another example. Those people really like the startup challenge and getting the ball rolling, and that's much more exciting and interesting to them than keeping the ball rolling, than just kind of maintaining and administering a business. So that whole kind of romantic notion of a startup in the garage and that sort of thing is what does appeal to a lot of people. The next C is creativity. So you may be a creative person. You may consider what you do to be a form of art, which certainly people would agree in your craft that is the case, and maybe you want to express something in that way, and that fulfills you as a person. And then lastly, I have to say cash. There are some people that start a business because they want to get rich and have a lot of money and that sort of thing. That's last for a reason. It's probably the least valid reason to start a business. If that's why you start a business, chances are pretty good you're going to swing and miss. So not to say that isn't an element of it, but it shouldn't be the main reason in which you do it. So a basic business plan is going to contain explaining your basic business concept. I want to make product X and sell it to customers Y to solve this problem for them, that sort of thing. Kind of what are you going to do? You're going to gather data on feasibility and the specifics of your concept. So you're going to talk to potential customers. You're going to look at demographics. How many customers are there? All of the feasibility issues about making your product and getting supply and inventory and all of those kinds of things. And then you're going to focus and refine the concept based on what you gather in number 2. So you're going to have an idea, you're going to do research, you're going to find out, you know what, there aren't as many of those kinds of customers as I thought there might be. And the ones I talked to are lukewarm, so I need to kind of change my plan a little bit. You may get information in number 2 that causes you to revise number 1. And then you outline the specifics of your business. Who am I going to sell to? What is my message to them going to be? How am I going to convey that message to them? How am I going to staff my company? How am I going to make my product? All of those kinds of, how am I going to get the money to do all of this? All of those kinds of things are kind of the specifics of how your business is going to run. And then putting it in a compelling form. And when I say a compelling form, I mean a form that is readable. If you're going to either a group of investors or if you're going to a bank, they look at a lot of these plans. So does your plan give them confidence? That's the number one thing. So is it clear and concise, and you back up your assertions with sources, so they're not having to just take your word for it? Those kinds of plans tend to be funded. So the benefit of planning, one, is that you get a document, and that's valuable for sure. That document you can use to tell potential investors, this is what my story is, potential lenders, potential employees. It could be used as a recruitment tool. So the document is important, but the process of writing the document, the process of asking those questions and thinking through the problems and the solutions and what you would do, all of that thought process is what the real benefit is, because it kind of enforces that discipline of having to ask those questions and think about those things before you start spending money. So the benefits of research, one is to gain knowledge. So you'll learn things. Certainly if you talk to customers, you'll learn things that you didn't know before you talk to them. But the other benefit of doing research is to demonstrate to others that you know what you're talking about, that you're not just saying thousands of people will buy my product. You're saying I polled this number of people and this is how many people said they were excited to buy my product. You give facts rather than opinions. So research, the way to go about that, and there's a really good section in the book, I think it's around page 23, in that section there anyways, that a good way to do research is to ask a question about your business as if you were an ignorant outsider, a layperson, and then come up with all those questions that would challenge that statement. So if you make a general statement about your business that customers desire high IBU beer that's of fantastic quality and they're willing to pay a lot for it. That's your general statement. So what are all the questions that a skeptic would ask about that? Okay. And then your research problem is to answer each of those questions. So it's kind of a brainstorming type of thing. But when you do that, you're going to get a lot of answers to those questions and learn a lot through that process, to the extent that you really ask the questions in a skeptical way. So there is I put a link to Timberland Library. There's a demo there that you can look at, a way to gain access to a lot of good data, especially demographic data. So you can also do some personal observation. I think shopping competitors is a worthwhile thing to do, to kind of learn what they do well, what they don't do well. You cannot talk to enough customers. Every time you talk to somebody that's a potential customer for your product, you should be asking them their opinions about things. That is going to inform you more than anything else you can do. If you ask things in the right way, a lot of times people are happy to share with you. That was what I found for my business. One of the things I would do if I got a big order from a customer, I would call them and thank them and then ask them why they chose us. I would learn so much about how customers viewed my company by asking that question, and people liked to be asked. So I can't stress that enough. You could also do surveys, which are asking customers questions. There's a lot of survey tools on the internet now that are either free or cheap. And a lot of those, you don't get great quality of information, but you might get information from a lot of people. It's difficult to incent people to reply to those. You could learn from other businesses. Now here's a deal where if your competitors are really only local, if you find somebody else in some other town that's doing something very similar to what you want to do, maybe it's a themed brew pub or whatever the case is, talk to that person. Call up that company and ask for the owner and say, I'm thinking of starting a business real similar to yours. I'm in Olympia, Washington. I'm not a competitor. What can you tell me? And most people are pretty happy to talk freely with you because they were once at the position you're in. So they're cool with that. The other, you could go to the Small Business Development Center. That's the Thurston County Economic Development Council. They're on 6th Avenue in Lacey, and they have a ton of resources for people starting businesses. So a few tips about making your plan compelling. So you should have a 5-minute, I apologize, I'm ahead of slide on my notes. Think about who it is that you're writing to, and think about what questions that reader is going to have, what they care about. If the reader of your report is a banker, I can tell you they care about one thing: getting paid back. They'll loan you money, but they want to make sure they get that money back with interest. So that your plan needs to communicate how you're going to make that happen. A venture capitalist is somebody that invests in your company. So a venture capitalist cares about one thing: getting a return on their investment, giving you $10,000 for a share in your company and then having it sell 2 years later for $25,000. That's what they want. Generally more than they want to share the profits or any of that sort of thing. They want to have appreciation in their investment. So again, you want to make sure you answer that question for them. How is that going to happen? Other investors may have other criteria. Key employees, you could tailor the plan to use it for a key employee search. Again, they're going to want to know, what am I going to be a part of? What is it going to feel like to work there? So tailoring the plan, have a plan where the facts and figures are the same in every version of the plan, but just like you would tailor a resume for a particular job, you would tailor your plan to a particular reader. So a reader is going to generally read an executive summary first. That's about a page or two that gives a quick overview of everything, they'll read that first. If they think that's compelling, they'll flip to the back, look at the financials, see what they think of your numbers. If they like that, they'll flip to the management section. So who is going to exactly pull this off, and have they done anything before? And then lastly, they'll look at the exit plan. How am I going to get my money out of this? How am I going to get paid back? How am I going to sell my stock? What's the end game? So making your plan compelling, you should have an elevator speech. That I think I mentioned that in the intro, that if you get on an elevator with Jeff Bezos, what are you going to tell him about your company before you get to his floor? So be able to boil it down, make it concise. Having facts, figures, and sources. So not just your opinion, but actual numbers. The time frame should be the next 3 to 5 years. A business plan for next year isn't long enough, and beyond 5 years is anyone's guess. So 3 to 5 years is a good rule of thumb. Use business language appropriate to the reader. My pet peeve is people that use lots of acronyms instead of saying the words out, and they assume that everybody else knows what EBITDA is or whatever the case is. I think that's offensive in some ways to readers. So know who your reader is and write to them. Bullet points are better than paragraphs of text. Nobody wants to turn a page and see a dense, solid page of text. You don't want people to get bored and put your plan down. So organizing the text visually so that it's easy to consume, bullets are a good way to do that. Another good way to do that is to use visuals wherever possible. Photographs, like I say here, illustrations, charts and graphs, that sort of thing. So the questions that get asked the most when somebody reads a business plan is the idea solid? Have they thought of something that is really a problem for customers, and the product should exist, right? Second, are there enough people out there that would buy this product? So if it seems a little far-fetched that there would be that many people, then, if you told me that you were going to open a gourmet French restaurant in Bucoda, I might say, I don't know if there's enough people in Bucoda that would support a gourmet French restaurant. So not to speak badly about Bucoda, but just as an example. None of the financial projections, both, do they strike that balance of being healthy? So, they're going to make money. You're going to make the money to pay this person back or whatever the case is, but while still being realistic. So somebody that says, I'm going to sell, $100,000 in my new beer the first year and $5 million next year. That it's easy to put a number in a spreadsheet. So are they being realistic, and do they have a way to make that happen? Is a key management capable of executing the plan? So if you tell me you're going to start a restaurant and all of the key people on your team, none of them have ever even worked in a restaurant, I would have concern about your ability to know what you need to know about how to do that. So I would read it to say, are there people on the team, or have they targeted the type of people they want to get in order to actually accomplish what they're saying they want to accomplish? And then lastly, how do I get paid back, right? If I loan you money, how are you going to repay me? Or if I invest in money, how am I going to get a return on my investment one day? So the length of the plan should be roughly 20 pages. So just kind of keep that in mind. We're going to be doing all these sections, and you've got a couple sections coming due here on October 4th. So keep in mind, each of these sections are going to be 1 to 2 pages. You'll put it all together to get to 20 pages, and that's double space. So if you have any questions, please call me. I will try to keep the lectures right around this length, so not too long. And I look forward to speaking with you. Bye-bye.